Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar where we'll be taking a look at the new EDF-GEMI WaterMAPP, a water management application efficiency toolkit. My name is Stephen Kennett and I look after the water risk and energy and carbon management channels here at 2 Degrees. I'm delighted to welcome our lineup of presenters today. We have Steve Shedroff from Procter & Gamble and GEMI's Vice Chair, Water Work Group Chair. We're also joined by Stephen Goldman and Brendan Fitzsimons from EDF. And chairing today's Q&A session is Steve Hellam, Executive Director of GEMI. Today's presentations will last for around 45 minutes, which will leave us with 10 to 15 minutes for questions at the end. Before we begin, I'd just like to remind everyone that you can submit questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A box on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Just type in your question and press send, and we'll wait till the end before answering as many as we can. As an aside, if you should have any technical issues during the webinar, please use the chat box on the right-hand side to send me a message, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So without any further delay, I'd like to hand over to Steve Shedroff, who'll get us started with today's webinar. So Steve, over to you.
Good morning. Thank you, Steve. I'm going to quickly go over the agenda topics and then dive right in to the information. So welcome to the webinar. We're going to talk about the antitrust guidelines that GEMI has. Then we're going to talk about what is GEMI. We'll talk a little bit, Steve Goldman will talk about the Environmental Defense Fund. And then Brendan Fitzsimons will talk about the background of the tool and how it was developed. And then we'll go through the overview of the toolkit. And then we'll wrap up with Steve Hellam talking about or doing the Q&A session for us. All right. Next slide, please. So, there's the agenda. So let's dive right into the antitrust rules. As with all meetings, GEMI uses antitrust guidelines to ensure that we don't get ourselves in any trouble. I don't think that will be an issue for this meeting given the format, but we do need to cover them. This is a non-compete kind of organization where we talk about mostly technical issues, and the expectation is that if we stray in the area that is uncomfortable for you, that may be part of antitrust, meaning that we're talking about business and agreements and trade. If you feel uncomfortable with the conversation, please let the moderator know, and we will redirect the conversation to ensure that we don't violate any antitrust rules. If you're taking notes for this meeting, please note that the antitrust guidelines were discussed. If you have any questions or concerns about the antitrust guidelines, you can find the full listing of expectations on the GEMI website under the antitrust guidelines tab. All right, next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about what GEMI is. All right, so next slide. GEMI is a collaboration of about 20 companies that work together in a business helping business model, developing insights and creating environmental sustainability solutions. We've been doing this for about 25 years. Next slide, please. And we remain relevant by focusing our attention on 3 key areas. We work on education opportunities such as this, where we discuss problem solving. We facilitate in-person meetings. We have a number of meetings each year. We have virtual meetings, and we do member surveys to understand what is current and might need to be addressed by the organization. We participate in many collaborations with among our members, with academics, NGOs, and other industry groups, trying to stay relevant in the space, and to promote a better understanding of environmental sustainability issues and find ways where we can help each other. We have a solution set of over 30 tools that draw on member experiences and insights, and we try to provide practical guidance for solutions for companies wherever they are in their sustainability journey. Next slide, please. So our primary means to find these tools that we have developed is our GEMI tool matrix, where you can see that it's based on a timeline of how things were developed. So depending upon where you are in your journey, you may jump into the overall timeline to learn about what might be useful for you as you move through the environmental and sustainability journey. There are a large number of tools for a variety of different topics, including how to create NGO collaborations, how to manage water, a large variety of tools. Next slide, please. And GEMI has two different membership levels to encourage businesses of all size to participate. So we have a greater than $2 billion club and a less than $2 billion club, where we have pricing and benefits for those two member levels. All members are invited to meetings for networking opportunities up to 3 times a year. Everybody has an equal voice in the development of the tools and in the selection of what webinar topics that we present, like today. We do benchmarking surveys to try to understand the direction that the organization needs to go and what topics are. But everybody is encouraged to participate in those to help set the direction for the organization. And then members have access to the members-only portion of the website, which includes a lot of the information gathered in the surveys and information gathered and coordinated at our meetings throughout the year. So if you have any more questions about GEMI, you can get many of them answered by looking at our website, GEMI.org. So if you have any questions, you can go there, and there is some contact information on there that you can contact Steve Hellam or myself or the president, Lori Williams, and get your questions answered. Next slide, please. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Stephen Goldman at EDF to let us know a little bit more about EDF.
Thanks, Steve. Good morning. I'm Steve Goldman. I'm a Marketing Communications Coordinator for EDF. And if you're not familiar, Environmental Defense Fund is a nonprofit environmental advocacy group. We have about 500,000 members and over 500 employees, mostly in the United States. We have four overarching goals. To stabilize, which you can see on the next slide, to stabilize the Earth's climate by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, to safeguard the oceans from pollution and overfishing, to restore ecosystems, including species, habitat, rivers, and watersheds, and to reduce or eliminate threats to health, especially children's health, from pollution and toxic chemicals. Our motto is finding the ways that work, and EDF uses a variety of tools to help us achieve our goals, including legal, policy advocacy, and as well as working with key partners. Next slide, please. And I'm part of EDF's corporate partnerships team, which spans across each of these areas. And while a name for a program like corporate partnerships, you wouldn't be surprised that we partner with companies. And that's one of the approaches that we should use to try and make the changes that we think need to happen. And you can see in this slide two of our experts, Jackie Roberts, who's no longer with EDF now, and Richard Dennison, who's on our chemicals team, on an early project working with McDonald's to figure out ways to reduce waste in their supply chain. And so they got to go through McDonald's University. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So we collaborate with companies as partners, not consultants. The environment is our only client, and businesses are our partners in serving that client. We're the only environmental group that takes no funding from our corporate partners. Generous individuals and foundations fund our work, which enables us to maintain our independence and credibility. And to avoid potential conflicts of interest, we don't accept funding from the companies we work with. Finally, we engage with companies on many levels, from information sharing to public policy advocacy to formal partnership projects that extend over a year in length and result in a public announcement. And a great example of that is the partnership we've had with AT&T, which Brendan and my colleague on the team will go into now.
Thank you, Stephen. It's good to be here presenting with the three Steves and Brendan, which we could start our own band. And EDF is very excited to be partnering with GEMI on the WaterMAPP tool and working with them to promote it to GEMI's members and beyond. And this actually builds on some joint work that EDF and GEMI have done before, including the working together back in 2008 on the GEMI Environmental Defense Fund Guide to Successful Corporate NGO Partnerships, and working with GEMI to help us with our EDF Climate Corps program, which is a program that places MBA students with companies to help identify environmental solutions that make business sense, and having webinars promoting the program as well as sharing information about it with its members. Next slide, please. So to transition to talking about the WaterMAPP, I thought I'd kick it off with a pop quiz. And the question is, which of these pictures is a cooling tower? 1, 2, or 3? If you answered 1 and 2, you're correct. Those are both cooling towers. The first one, those who are Simpsons fans will recognize from the opening scene, where Homer works at the nuclear power plant. And those cooling towers aren't the focus of this work. It's actually image number 2, the cooling towers on buildings that are part of building cooling systems, the focus of our work. Next slide, please. And to give a little background on the project, it started back when AT&T was looking to do something in water. And as a first step, they wanted to get a handle on the water use on their building portfolio of about 8,000 buildings. So they pulled together the data on the water use for each of those buildings. And what they found was just 120 buildings accounted for 50% of the water use. And what all those buildings had in common were high evaporative cooling needs for water. That is, these buildings had cooling towers. So that seemed like a sensible place to focus the efforts of our project to help work with AT&T to help them reduce water use in their buildings. Next slide, please. And I know we have a variety of folks on the call, including facility managers, who might not find this surprising, but this infographic shows water use in office buildings and data centers. And as you can see here, the average office building uses almost 28% of its water for cooling. And for data centers that have higher cooling needs because of servers and other technical equipment in the building that are generating huge amounts of heat, those cooling needs can be 50% or more. So the bottom line is that water use for cooling is a significant user of water in lots of buildings. Next slide, please. So when we did the project with AT&T, we had a pilot phase, and we had 3 approaches that we wanted to test. So the cooling tower systems use chemicals to treat the water going through the system, because there's a buildup in solids from the evaporation that pulls the water out but leaves the solids behind that are in the water that is used when you get from your tap. The other approach was to use non-chemical treatment approaches like a filtration system or a water softener. And finally was looking at an approach to reduce the building cooling load by taking advantage of free air cooling or using air economizers. And for the pilots, we teamed up with a consultant, a gentleman by the name of Bill Harfst, who had 35 plus years of experience with cooling towers and water treatment programs, who provided expertise and guidance on our work together. And he visited each of the pilot sites as part of our assessment. And what we found was at least for the pilot sites that we tested, they all seemed to be pretty efficient with their chemical treatment program. Although for pilots you get a self-selection bias, so AT&T continues to look at those opportunities across their building portfolios. They also tested some technical solutions, including a filtration system. And finally, looking at the free air cooling systems. And there were some opportunities to identify some cost-effective technical solutions and some great opportunities by taking advantage of the free air cooling opportunities to reduce the cooling needed for the building. And AT&T, and I'm sure a lot of companies are like this, had lots of buildings with air economizer systems installed. But over time, those systems had breakdowns for certain sections, so it wasn't operating at full capacity. And there were projects, for example, such as repairing a damper to bring that system back up to its full functionality, that had huge savings for both dollars, water as well as energy, because you didn't need the mechanical cooling from the chiller, which takes up a significant amount of energy. So it was a great opportunity that provided multiple benefits from water and energy savings, and was very cost effective. Next slide, please. So these tools, just to underscore, these tools we developed with AT&T and now we're working with GEMI to continue to build on that initial work, are applicable not just to a company like AT&T with office buildings and technical buildings like data centers, but actually to a huge swath of buildings ranging from hospitals, universities, and shopping malls. Basically, any building using a cooling tower could really benefit from some of these tools and resources we've put together. Next slide, please. So now I'll do an overview of the toolkit in a high level and walk you through the various tools and resources that are available. Next slide, please. So the tools and resources are available on GEMI's website at the URL address on your slide here. And the tool includes is a key component of the WaterMAPP toolkit is the WaterMAPP spreadsheet. Next slide, please, and I'll give you a brief tour of that. And this, we can actually go to the next slide. Thank you. The spreadsheet includes three key components: a water scorecard component, a water efficiency calculator, and a cycles of concentration calculator. And this first slide is of the scorecard, and this is a tool that can be used to promote visibility on water conservation within a company. And this was a tool that AT&T had used on the energy side, and they brought that over to the water side when they were starting to dig into reducing their water use. And the scorecard is different than an audit in that it's aimed at promoting improved behaviors and practices by buildings, and it allows you to compare against buildings by providing a score. And the types of questions, and if you haven't already, I encourage you to go to the website and download the toolkit and take it for a test drive. And you can see I'll just give a few illustrative questions, but you can really see in detail what the types of questions that AT&T looked at and that others might want to consider as they start to look more deeply at their water use. They were aimed at promoting improved practices and behaviors. So there'll be one of the questions includes, have you gotten a water audit of your facility? And you get some points for that. A follow-up question then asks if you took those recommendations identified from the water audit and implemented some of them, and you get some points from that. And the idea is to drive the facility to improve its water conservation performance. And one of the ways AT&T used this was it would take its high-performing buildings based on the results and the score they got and match that with some of their lower-performing facilities and share information. So the high-performing building can share practices and things they did to help improve their score. Next slide, please. And this slide shows the example of the score you get. Next slide, please. And so that was the water scorecard component. The other component of the toolkit is the water efficiency calculator. And if you look closely at the bottom of the screen, you can see the different tabs. These are screenshots from the WaterMAPP tool. You can see these different tabs in from the screenshots of the Excel spreadsheet. So this tool is the water efficiency calculator, and that helps you estimate what the potential water, energy, and dollar savings look like based on your kind of key inputs. So the key dials that you'd be using to estimate the improvement is by improving your cycles of concentration, which is a measure of water efficiency of the cooling tower, or by taking advantage of free air cooling. and you can you can plug in what those improvements look like, and then estimate what the savings would be in terms of these different components: the water savings, the energy savings, if you're taking advantage of free air cooling, and then what that means for dollars. So this was a important tool that AT&T used in building the business case for the various water efficiency projects that they looked at. And I think AT&T is like a lot of companies that the investments in those projects need to meet a minimum return on investment for them to get funded. So this was a tool that AT&T used in building the business case to do that. Next slide, please. So this is this next slide is a really technical tool. So for aimed at facility managers to evaluate how their cooling tower system is doing. And one of the key considerations for how efficient your system can run is what is the water quality that is going to be used in the cooling tower. For facilities that have water that is that doesn't have a lot of solids or other things in it, you can more easily achieve a higher cycles of concentration or efficiency in water use versus a facility that has a lot of solids in the water. So you can see from this screenshot there's inputs that you would plug in for the makeup water quality, and this is something you would be able to get from your local water utility, or if you have a vendor who's overseeing your water treatment program for a facility, they should be able to get you this, and you can plug that information. And if you're using a chemical treatment program at your facility, you can get an estimate of what your maximum recommended cycles of concentration should be. And this is a great way to plug in those figures, see what the potential is, and then compare that to how you're doing, and identify an opportunity to improve efficiency. There's also, you'll see there's an embedded guide in the spreadsheet that provides some additional guidance on using the calculator, as well as a decision tree if you want to go beyond a chemical treatment program and look at some of the non-chemical treatment approaches out there. There's a decision tree based on the water makeup quality that you have to help identify what solutions might make sense for that facility, and as well as some background in the guide on what the different types of non-chemical treatment solutions look like. Next slide, please. This spreadsheet can be customized. So for the water scorecard components, there's ways you can adjust the kind of key things that you want to score. There's also some tweaks you can do on the customizations for the particular building. So we have a office building and a data center, and have what the hours of operation were generally for AT&T's buildings. But on this worksheet, you can make additional adjustments depending on the specific operating hours for your building. Next slide, please. And there's also some terms and definitions. So not every company uses the same terminology in describing some of this. So to just help everyone be on the same page, there's some definitions for some of the key terms we used in the WaterMAPP. And there's some additional worksheets in there that are hidden because it might be too much for the average user, but there's a worksheet on the geographic data, because that's a big impact on what the cooling load would look like for a particular building. And we use NOAA data to get estimates. And you'll see in the water, that first tab, there's some question about your geography, and you find a city that is close to the particular building, so you can take into account the specific weather and climate conditions for that facility in estimating what the potential savings might look like. And as there's another tab on the that allows customizing the water scorecard. So there might be areas that are more important for your particular organization that you can change, or areas that you want to change the grades for the scoring on it. That all can be done. Next slide, please. So in addition to the WaterMAPP, we developed some tools and resources to help facility managers. This is something that a lot of facility managers, based on interviews that we did with folks managing AT&T's buildings, said they would find valuable. They are being asked to do more and more with less and less resources, and having some easily digestible and succinct materials was something they said would be helpful for them in their day-to-day job. So we developed a cooling tower guide along with a 12-video series. And again, we worked with our consultant, Bill Hartz, in developing these materials. And we were real aware that most folks don't have time to read a 500-page tome. So the cooling tower guide is about 30 pages and provides some great background on how to improve your water treatment program for your cooling tower and operate that system more efficiently. And there's some companion videos. Again, there's 12 in the series, so if there's a particular area of interest, you can dig into that. But if you were to watch them all through, it'd be an hour long. And GEMI's resources are here as well, so a nice one-stop shopping for a bunch of different water materials to help you, your particular organization, improve its water conservation. Next slide, please. And this slide just provides an overview of the toolkit components and how different folks within an organization might use them. So if you're a facility manager, there's some training materials there that I had just mentioned. The WaterMAPP tool would be helpful in using that, for example, that cycles of concentration estimator to identify opportunities to improve your cooling tower system, as well as getting data on your scorecard to assess what's going on in your particular facility, and then help you point you in the right direction for some opportunities to improve efficiency. If you're an organizational leader, there's some materials on the website like that infographic on water use to help educate leadership within an organization about these issues, which if you're not digging into them might be new for folks. They can use the water scorecard to compare performance across buildings and use that as a way to identify leaders and laggards and improve overall performance. And then the water efficiency calculator can be used to build a business case which is critical for not just identifying these solutions, but getting them funded and implemented. Next slide, please. And I provided a high-level overview of the tools and resources, but there is a webinar that runs about an hour that really gets into the details of using the toolkit. So if you are taking it for a test drive and want some additional guidance, that's a great place to go to really get into the nitty-gritty of using the toolkit and provide some additional background on some of the other resources. Next slide, please. And just circling back to the business case, from EDF's perspective, we know that lots of companies will do the right thing in terms of paying for investments that bring environmental benefits. But we know a lot more companies will do the right thing if we can show it makes business sense. So this toolkit is a great way to build a strong business case for water efficiency of investments. As I'm sure many of the folks know on the call, the payback on water efficiency investments isn't as robust as energy efficiency investments. So it can be a challenge to get those funded. So this tool really helps build as strong a case as possible. So it identifies the water savings from water coming into a facility, but also breaks out the sewer costs, which can often be more. And for some folks, they might be aware that you're typically charged by the utility for the water coming into your building, and they assume that water coming into the building is coming out. But if you have a cooling tower, a lot of that water actually gets evaporated to the atmosphere and does not go to the sewer. So, and it depends on the water utility, but you can be eligible for sewer credits and get credited because you're not that water is actually not going down the sewer. And you need good metering in place to track that, and that's an opportunity to strengthen that business case, and can be factored into the WaterMAPP tool. There's also chemicals used to treat the water, and if you're not operating at your recommended max cycles of concentration, that key indicator on how efficiently your cooling tower is managing its water use, that means you're going to be paying more for the chemicals to treat the water. So if you can improve that efficiency, that means there's fewer chemicals that need to be go into the water treatment program, which also translates into dollar savings. And finally, there's the free air cooling opportunity I had mentioned earlier on in the presentation. And this is a key opportunity that AT&T found. And by bundling the water savings along with the energy savings, it made for a really strong business case. And AT&T had actually had a program in place to identify air economizer opportunities, but they had a bucket of projects that didn't quite make their internal investment hurdle to get them funded. And through this project, they realized that there are also some water savings associated with these air economizer projects, and that was enough to get a bucket of them approved that wouldn't have been approved earlier because of the additional water savings that would accrue from them. So the bottom line is this is a tool to help make as strong a business case as possible for those water efficiency investments for a cooling tower, which is really critical in helping to get them identified and, from EDF's perspective, scaled up and implemented as broadly as possible. So that concludes my overview of the toolkit and resources, and I think I'll hand it over to Steve.
Thanks so much, Brendan, and the entire team. Thank you so much for doing this morning. And special thanks to the folks at 2 Degrees for pulling this together and hosting this webinar this morning. We do have some really good questions. In fact, I'm going to follow up, Brendan, with you immediately on a question we got with regard to the ROI. And it basically said, impressive ROI. How conservative was this figure? You want to try and handle that one?
In terms of what AT&T had to clear?
It sounds like to me that's what the person's asking. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think I think it was roughly about 20%.
Okay. All right. You also mentioned, Brendan, very briefly the concept of free air cooling. So it's kind of like a packaging and getting you where you need to be in both a business construct but also an environmental concept. The question here is, what kind of feedback did you get from the occupants? Were they receptive to it? Did they get what was going on, and were they supportive?
I don't have a good feel for the occupants of the building necessarily. We were interacting more with the facility managers and those teams. And I think you, probably like a lot of organizations, you had some folks who were super enthusiastic about this and saw this as a big opportunity. And then you probably had some other folks who they've already got a lot on their plate and they are already feeling overwhelmed, and this might seem like one more thing, but I think the part of the, and every organization is different, but I think part of the trick is identifying who those champions are, and often they carry a lot of, and these are the enthusiastic folks who probably are doing this on their own, even without some guidance and support from leadership, and really tapping them to help scale up within the company and share what they've learned. And I think that was one of the components of what AT&T has been trying to do, and in part that was done through that scorecard by seeing who your leaders are, and then also identifying laggards and figuring out ways to leverage those leaders so they can help others improve their performance at their buildings.
it's interesting you should mention that because one of the quick guides that the GEMI is working on right now is one that's focusing on how you really drive sustainability opportunities inside companies, being led by Bob Toy at Union Pacific and our other folks, and we're actually working on that quick guide because it all goes to when you have those kind of great ideas that work, how do you then drive that down through your folks? Another question, how does the WaterMAPP fit in with other GEMI water tools? Steve Shedroff, you want to try to take that one on?
Sure. The WaterMAPP tool really fits well. It complements the other tools. I would say that the other GEMI tools are really kind of high level, 10,000 foot level or higher. How am I doing on water? How do I plan for water? The local water tool is to identify your local water risk and help you put an action plan together to understand better and manage that risk and improve your water footprint. And this really is a tool, boots on the ground kind of tool. You're getting in and actually it's not an overview tool. It's getting in and finding the actual cause of where water is going and allows you to manage that particular source better. And I think the focus on building cooling towers is good because just about every company, regardless of size, has some level of real estate that they have to keep cool. Of course, unless they're in Alaska, and then that's a limited opportunity for needing the cooling. But it's much more broader than some of the industrial solutions we might have. So it's got bigger bang for the buck, and it's a very specific but useful tool to cover one of the major water uses. It's kind of hard to get folks to do water conservation in bathrooms, but if you can do water conservation at the building level, you've got a good lever to work on and to actually make an impact on your water use from your buildings.
Yeah, and I thank Stephen, and I think I draw your all's attention back to the presentation PowerPoint in terms of that list of resources that are available that the folks went through in terms of what EDF has available, GEMI has available, and other folks. It's a great one-pager in terms of various kinds of resources. Got a question here on the focus on building cooling towers. While our tool is focused on building cooling towers, is the toolkit also applicable to industrial cooling towers, i.e. refineries, petrochemical, and other manufacturing plants? Anybody want to take that one on?
Sure, this is Brendan. It should be applicable to industrial cooling towers. The focus with this was on the AT&T facility, but your cooling towers at industrial facilities are going to have the same operating parameters as your building cooling towers.
Okay, sounds good. Listen, I just want to remind folks on the call, because we've got a real good number of folks on the call. If you do have questions, please just click on your chat box and put your questions in there, and we'll get them addressed. Here's an interesting one. Brendan and EDF team, why is AT&T sharing this? I mean, they've done the work, they put the resources in. Great, congratulations to them for doing it and being willing to share it. But do you have insights as to why they're sharing this tool with both with yourselves and certainly with us as kind of a supporter of these kind of programs?
Sure. This is Brendan again. Good question, and I think there's a variety of reasons. I think one is that as I'm sure the listeners on the call know, the environmental problems are big problems that companies are facing, and I think there's an increasing recognition that no one company is going to be able to tackle this on their own. It's really going to require us working together. So in that spirit, I think that's part of the motivation for AT&T. If they can only do so much in a water-stressed area to manage risks for their facilities without working more broadly within that area to address the problem in a bigger way. I think when we partner with a company like AT&T, as part of our partnership arrangement, we require that any of the tools and resources that are developed are shared broadly. As Steve mentioned in the overview of AT&T, we don't accept corporate donations. And part of that is so we can push our partners beyond their comfort zone in terms of setting goals, as well as promoting the stuff more broadly. And that's how we get paid, where our client is the environment. So working with AT&T and GEMI to help promote these solutions as broadly as possible is how we get paid. And finally, I think there's an element of working with us and sharing this as a way to establish some credibility on the environmental front and some leadership. So I think that was also factored into the various motivations for why AT&T was eager to share what it was doing as broadly as possible.
Great. Here's a pretty technical question, but a very logical question. Is water usage in the buildings dependent on local climate and local conditions, slash coastal areas with high humidity, et cetera? Are there allowances in the tool for that, or on
that's a great question. Yeah, so that's a great question. So in that water scorecard input, you'll see there's information and location, and the geography is absolutely a key factor in determining the cooling load on a building, both the temperature and humidity levels, and so that's taken into account in those calculations. So there's some average NOAA data points that are factored into that water tool for the calculations of what the cooling load will look like for the building, including the opportunity for taking advantage of free air cooling. So it's probably not surprising to folks that if you're in a place like Alaska, that's a big opportunity for you. If you're in Miami, that's going to be less of an opportunity, and you're going to have a much higher heating load on the building.
Great. Steve Shedroff, I'm going to put you on the spot in the context of that question. I'm assuming that Procter & Gamble, as you look at these kind of issues, you're a hugely global company, so you're looking at changes and weather conditions and those kind of things. Anything to add in the context of what Brendan just laid out in terms of the way that you guys look at these various issues, both in either a global or domestic construct?
I actually covered it very well. I'm trying to think of if there's anything I really can add.
Okay.
I mean, it's useful in that it does have city data in it, and a variety of geographic areas, so that we don't have to dig for that data. I mean, that's one of the helpful parts.
Excellent. Here's one. What are some of the challenges you've found with raising awareness about water use within either AT&T or other companies as you start to look at trying to implement water efficiency investments? And that goes to the whole panel, okay?
Sure. This is Brendan. I'll dive in here. I think the key challenge is the business case, and again, that's probably not surprising for a lot of folks on that call, but the energy efficiency projects, because the payback on that is so much quicker, tend to crowd out some of the water efficiency investments. I think the silver lining in all the water stress that we're facing is that there's increasing awareness by companies that this is something they need to manage, and I think hopefully having a tool like this to build that business case is really helpful, as well as the GEMI tools to evaluate that risk, so that managing your risk against water stress is part of the decision-making process to evaluate these investments.
Anybody else have a comment on that? Actually, Brendan, I kind of appreciate the fact that you just teed me up. I'm going to take a little bit of an opportunity here to say that in the context of that business case, it can come in the context of dollars and cents and traditional ROI. It can also come in the context of risk reductions. And I just highlight for the folks on the call that GEMI has created a local water tool that's on that list of available tools that really focuses on, from a global perspective, potential risks that companies could face in the context of their basic water issues. And that was a tool that was based on the World Business Council's Sustainable Development activities. It was developed for us, for GEMI, by CH2M Hill. it really looks, it really adds into the case, not only in the context of ROI, but in the context of potential global water risk for areas where you have facilities or processes that you're looking at. So it actually, you've got an ROI impact and you've got a risk impact. Chances are pretty good you may be able to address some of those kind of issues in a more constructive fashion. There is a question in terms of the geographic coverage. Is it global or just the U.S., Brendan?
Another good question. So this iteration of the tool is just based on the U.S. NOAA data, but assuming the ability to get weather data globally, that could be certainly incorporated into a future iteration of the tool.
All right. We got one that says, question, how can my organization start using
Steve, before we
tool?
move on,
Yeah.
I just want to throw out the fact that the WaterMAPP is an open source tool, and we actually encourage people to not only use it as it's been put together, but if they find a way to bolster its capabilities or to adapt it for different needs, we very much welcome that.
Oh, that's a very good point. Very good point. And I anticipate, too, that if they do that, if they're in a position to be able to share that back with either you folks at EDF or us at GEMI, that'd be very helpful, too, because that'll help us then share that message broader in the way that people are looking or utilizing or applying the tool.
And we do have a share form on GEMI's website to help people do just that.
You know, please, you want to tell them where that is so they could. I think it's right on the front page of the website. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah, we had originally put together a share form. We've been interested in hearing back from companies as they're working through use of the toolkit. So as we put together the site, put together the page on GEMI's site, if you scroll down, you'll note there's the button on the bottom specifically for sharing your stories, right next to where you would download the WaterMAPP tool. So we're really looking to hear from companies, whether you have questions, whether you have ways in which you're using it. We're really interested in whether it's helped you get on the path to a water reduction goal, whether the suggested practices are proving to be useful for you. We're really looking for any feedback that you have, and especially if you have moved forward with operational changes in your own company.
Well, it's Steve. Could I just reemphasize the importance of that, because I know that anyone that's in the tool development or application business, everyone is looking for how is this tool actually utilized and applied. What are the results of that? So to the extent that you could utilize that share form, it doesn't have to be a major program. It can be a smaller or tactical program, but the ability to be able to share that information with others, it may very well spur other people to think in other kinds of ways about ways that these tools can be applied. So we're always looking for that kind of input, and then collectively, I mean, the great thing about EDF and GEMI is if we get the information into the core, we can start to share that in multiple ways. We're kind of coming down on the end of our time, so we still got a little bit of time for at least one more question or two. So if you have anything, please go ahead and use that chat box to ask it. I think we're covering things pretty well here. But I guess I'll just do the open-ended question, and that is, how can an organization start using this tool? I know you all have covered it generically in terms of the overall overview, but I'm a company that sees these opportunities. Where do I start? How do I do it?
Yeah, this is Brendan. I can jump in with that. I think you don't necessarily have to use all the tools at once. You can see what makes sense for your organization, and that might depend where you are in your water conservation journey. So for those who are just getting started, the Scorecard is a great way to kind of assess water use and efficiency opportunities across their building portfolio. For those, some companies and organizations might be further along, but they might really appreciate the technical tools and training resources for the cooling towers and share those materials with their facility managers. And or if there's a training program in place for facility managers, incorporate those materials into those programs. And when they're every company probably has a different approach in how they build the business case, but taking a look at the components of the building case, which the WaterMAPP water efficiency calculator can help you do, and try and make sure you are factoring all the potential benefits into that business case. And finally, I'll do a plug for the Climate Corps program. That's a program, as I mentioned, which takes top-notch MBA students and has them do a fellowship over the summer with the company. We actually had a couple fellows this summer who, in the program, who helped companies implement the toolkit and components of the toolkit, including a small company you all might have heard of called Verizon, which I will say AT&T was tickled pink that Verizon, one of their fiercest competitors, saw value in the toolkit and was using it. So I think that speaks to the value of the toolkit as a way for companies who are either just getting started or even those further along to adapt components of it to help them with their water conservation efforts. So those are a couple different ways to get started. And like I said, if you did EDF Climate Corps for companies or organizations that might not have enough resources themselves to jump into this, that's a great way to get a jump start on it and take advantage of those extra MBA analytical minds to give them a jump start.
You know, Brendan, I'm glad you said that, because that program is absolutely an excellent program. We have a number of GEMI companies that are in it, and I will tell you if you talk about specific ROI in the context of the investment in these young, very bright people who come in and think and have recommendations. We know a number of our companies have used the program, and the return has been outstanding. It's been a great opportunity for the student, great opportunity for the companies, and it's made a lot of our companies some money, so which is even better.
That's great feedback to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Has AT&T offered some retrospective information on cost savings, capital investments for the case studies that have been cited?
So we have those couple examples we've pulled out. We haven't yet kind of gone back and done a broader case study, but that's actually a great suggestion to pick out some of the opportunities and kind of share some of the business benefits. So we can circle back with them and explore that further.
Yeah, I think that would be certainly help build the business case.
Absolutely.
Here's one on the green building activities. Can I assume that they do have specific requirements on water requirements for cooling, or maybe they don't? I'm sorry, I'm not that familiar necessarily on the water side with LEED. Do any of you folks know on the call?
This is Brendan. We had talked with the Green Building Council a little while back, and they had actually thought this was a nice complement for resources that they had. And I can't remember if they had points for that. I will also say that different localities have requirements. So we've been doing some work in Texas, and one of the cities, it might be Austin, had some requirements that new buildings have to have a certain amount of efficiency required for new cooling tower installations. And I would suspect as water scarcity becomes an issue that more and more localities are facing, that those type of regulations will continue to pop up as we try and manage the water stress challenge.
And this is Stephen, and I'd be remiss for mentioning the fact that I'm calling you from California, and we're actually doing a presentation today to company area businesses about the toolkit, but especially in California, those water risks are becoming increasingly acute, and there are both penalties being levied for excessive water use, but it's also an opportunity for businesses to get proactive and engage on water conservation internally. And we feel the toolkit's actually a great place to start with that, if they haven't previously done so.
Absolutely. Here's a question that I'm not sure I understand exactly what it means, but I bet one of you guys will. Does the tool have an associated accuracy with its predictions?
Yeah, this is Brendan. I can field that. That's another really good question. So as folks who are experienced in trying to put together models predicting efficiency and water efficiency gains in buildings, there's a challenge of trying to figure out the right level of detail to ask for, and we did wrestle with that, because the more data points you add, you can help improve the accuracy, but then it becomes very unmanageable. So we think we struck a reasonable balance in the key data points to make these estimates, but not make them so onerous that no one would use them. What we didn't want a situation was that you needed 500 different data points to come up with something, because we just didn't think it would be used. So we think we got a reasonable balance that the AT&T team felt confident in using for building their business cases, but there's certainly opportunities to improve. So if a particular building has, because of some analysis that they've done, some more detailed information, there could be ways to incorporate that into the estimates. And if folks, as they dig into that and have some feedback and on that, we, as Stephen and others have said, we certainly welcome hearing from you. But we try to get the right balance of getting good estimates without having too many data points that became so onerous that we didn't use it.
Gotcha. Now I am pretty sure. I mean, I'm pretty old, so maybe I'm already forgetting the questions that I've asked. But I just got another question from a repeat that I think. But let's cover it again just to make sure that this is covered for one of the folks on the call. Still wondering if the coverage is global or only U.S. And just take another stab at it, because obviously we kind of maybe we missed on the first time we went through that.
This is Brendan again. No, I think we did get that one before. The answer is that the geographic data is based only in the U.S., but I will say you can, and at some point, a future iteration, we can try and incorporate more of the global weather data. But at this point, if you're in a country that's, or in an area that's not in the U.S., this is completely open source, so you can see the calculations for how we arrived at the estimates, and you could, on your own initiative, kind of for your particular area for the building, pull out the, figure out the key local data, weather points you'd need to put in, and then use the rest of the tool to help with your assessment.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Hey, listen, real quickly, we're gonna round this up. I could just say, Brendan and Steve, thank you very much, because that would cover all the Steves. Steve Shedroff, would you like to make any closing comments, sir?
No, I want to thank everybody for attending. I think this is a wonderful tool, a wonderful complement to what GEMI has to offer in terms of water management. We started this a long time ago. Our collaboration with EDF is long-standing, and I appreciate the opportunity to work with EDF and their team at AT&T and others that have helped to bring this tool out and make it available so that we can help promote it and save a little water, save a little money.
There you go. Brendan, closing comments for you and your team, sir?
Sure. I think you all said it really well, but EDF really welcomes the teaming up with GEMI on this and other work we've done in the past. So we're real excited about this call today, and thank you for everyone for listening in and for all the work the GEMI team did in terms of putting this together. So thanks all around, and as we had said, any feedback from folks who start using the tool, we'd greatly appreciate.
Thank you so much, Steve. We're going to turn it back to you with one last thanks to 2 Degrees for organizing this call. You all do tremendous work. Folks, if you're not familiar with 2 Degrees, they got 40,000 people that care about these kind of issues around the globe, and they're an extraordinary resource. They help drive issues, and we're just very, very pleased to have the opportunity to work with them. And thank you, folks at 2 Degrees, for hosting this call this morning. Steve, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Steve. And all the other panelists for today. I just want to remind everyone who's on the webinar that a recording and the presentation slides will be archived on the 2 Degrees platform, and as soon as this goes live, I'll send an email out to everybody with the links to these. So I hope everyone found today interesting and useful, and thanks again for joining us.